He thought he was ending my life quietly with a cup of tea. Instead, he poisoned everything he loved, and didn't even realize it until it was too late. Before I begin, I hope you'll stay with me through this story. And if it speaks to you in any way, please support our channel, like, share, and subscribe. It means more than you know. It started with the tea. Every morning, Nolan would bring me a cup, warm, sweet, just how I liked it. At first, I thought it was sweet, thoughtful even. But after a few weeks, I started feeling off. I'd wake up feeling sick. My hands would tremble. My head felt foggy. And the fatigue, it clung to me like a weight I couldn't shake. I told myself it was stress, maybe a virus. But deep down, something didn't feel right. I'm a nurse. I know my body. I know when something's wrong. And something was wrong. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to believe that Nolan, my husband of 10 years, could have anything to do with it. Instead, I started writing things down. How I felt each day. What time he gave me the tea. How long the symptoms lasted. Quietly, I began saving the tea in the freezer, pouring whatever was left into little containers and labeling them with the date. One day, while doing laundry, I found a receipt tucked inside the pocket of Nolan's jacket. A weekend spa stay. Fancy. Romantic. But not for me. I hadn't gone anywhere. A knot formed in my chest. That same week, I noticed a small jewelry box in the back of his desk drawer. A necklace, delicate silver, with a heart-shaped pendant. Beautiful. But again, not for me. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. I thanked him for the tea. I kissed him goodnight. I played the loving wife. All while my mind raced, collecting little pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to see. I started checking his schedule, watching him more closely. He started coming home late more often. Said he had work meetings. I nodded and pretended to believe him. But inside, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just sick anymore. I was waking up. And I was done being the quiet, trusting wife. Whatever he was planning, whatever he thought I wouldn't see, I saw it now. Every sip of tea, every lie, every late night, it all pointed to something much darker than cheating. He thought he was slowly making me disappear. But he didn't know who he was dealing with. That Saturday morning, Nolan said he was heading to a property showing across town. He kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong and grabbed his keys. I smiled back, pretending not to notice the lie in his voice. But the moment his car pulled out of the driveway, I slipped on my sneakers, grabbed my spare keys, and followed him. I stayed back just far enough so he wouldn't see me. I didn't have a plan, just a gut feeling I couldn't shake. My heart pounded as I watched him take a few unexpected turns. He wasn't heading toward any real estate office. After 30 minutes, he pulled into the parking lot of a boutique gym I'd never seen before. A few minutes later, a tall woman with long black hair came outside. She wore leggings and a crop top, laughing as she leaned into his window. Then she got in the car. They drove off together. I sat in my car frozen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared. Her name, I would later learn, was Taryn Melrose. She was 29, a fitness trainer, and from the looks of it, my husband's new obsession. I followed them to a brunch place just outside the city. They sat close, shared food, held hands. He looked relaxed, happy, like a man who didn't have a wife waiting at home, sipping poison tea every morning. That night, when Nolan got back, he brought me flowers, said he was sorry for being so busy lately. I thanked him, kissed his cheek, and put the flowers in a vase. He had no idea I'd been watching. Over the next week, I dug into everything. I checked our phone records, looked up that gym, created a fake client profile just to see her posts. That's when I found the private photo album. Taryn had shared them with her close friends. I wasn't on that list, but my fake profile was. There were pictures of her and Nolan at parks, cafes, a cabin in the woods. They looked like a couple deeply in love. But what shattered me completely were the messages. Be patient. She's almost gone. I hate pretending. I just want it to be us. Soon. I promise. They weren't just sneaking around behind my back. They were waiting for me to die. Suddenly, everything made sense. The tea. The necklace. The strange silence in our home. Nolan wasn't just cheating. He was building a new life without me in it. But I wasn't going anywhere. They thought I was weak. That I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't survive. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I walked into the small clinic tucked between a dentist's office and a bakery. No big signs, no waiting room chatter. Just a quiet space where people came with questions they couldn't ask anywhere else. I didn't use my real name. I just handed over the tea sample I had saved from that morning and asked for a toxicology test. They took my blood too. A week later, the results came back. Sedatives. Microdoses of digitalis. Not enough to kill me right away, but enough to make me sick, confused. Enough to make someone think they were slowly erasing me without drawing suspicion. I stood in that tiny exam room with the results in my hand, my heart pounding but my face calm. This was it. Proof. Real, solid proof that Nolan wasn't just lying. He was trying to end me, quietly, gently, with a smile and a kiss and a cup of tea. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I went home, and I made tea. I handed Nolan his usual mug, then took mine, pretending to sip. We talked about the weather, about a dinner party he wanted us to attend. He barely looked at me. His voice was colder now, distant, like he was already somewhere else. With someone else. That night, after he went to bed, I pulled out my containers and labeled each one by date and time. I had been doing this for weeks now, pouring leftover tea into plastic vials, hiding them in the back of the freezer. Now I knew why. I was building my own evidence. Every morning after that, I did the same thing. I drank just enough to keep suspicion off me, then poured the rest into another container. Labeled, sealed, frozen. At home, I stayed sweet, loving, the perfect wife. I rubbed his shoulders after work. I laughed at his terrible jokes. I complimented his tie. And every time I looked into his eyes, I imagined what it would feel like when the truth landed on him like a ton of bricks. He had no clue. He still brought me tea, still kissed my forehead, still thought he was in control. But I wasn't planning divorce. I wasn't looking to run. I was planning something much colder, much quieter, something he'd never see coming. The morning it happened felt just like any other. Quiet, calm. The sun slid through the curtains, and the house was still. Nolan was in the shower, humming like he always did when he thought everything was fine. I walked into the kitchen and boiled the water. Same routine, same mugs, same little silver spoon. Only this time I switched the cups. I had saved the tea from the day before, the one I had only pretended to drink. I poured it into Nolan's mug, stirred it carefully, and added a touch of honey just the way he liked. In mine I made fresh tea, clean, harmless. He came downstairs, fixing his tie, and smiled as he reached for the cup I had set out for him. "Thanks, babe," he said. I smiled back. Of course. He took a sip and didn't think twice. I watched him drink it while I pretended to do the same. My heart was steady. My hands didn't shake. If he noticed anything different in my eyes, he didn't say a word. Later that day, he left the house with a second thermos of tea, something he said he'd started doing lately to cut back on spending. I knew exactly where he was going. I didn't follow him this time. I didn't need to. That evening, around 9 p.m., I got the call. It was from a hospital downtown. Nolan and a woman named Taryn Melrose had both been admitted to the ER with severe nausea, dizziness, and heart palpitations. The doctor said it looked like poisoning, but they hadn't identified the substance yet. I gasped, holding the phone like it was made of glass. "Oh my God, poisoning?" My voice cracked. "Is he okay? Are they okay?" They were stable. The doctor told me they'd both pulled through, but were under observation. I thanked him and hung up, dropping the phone onto the counter. Then I leaned against the wall and let a single tear roll down my cheek. Not from sadness. From relief. Nobody suspected me. Why would they? I was the loving wife who had no idea her husband was cheating. I was the one who brought him tea every morning out of habit and affection. I was the woman he was slowly trying to erase. And now, he had walked right into his own trap. By the next day, both Nolan and Taryn were too sick to even speak clearly. The doctors had questions, but there were no answers that made sense. I visited Nolan with trembling hands and glassy eyes. He looked up at me like he didn't know what world he was in. I sat beside him and held his hand, and inside I smiled. They tried to poison my life, but in the end they drank their own poison. Every last drop. After the hospital incident, Nolan came home a shell of himself. Pale, weak, jumpy. He kept asking if I had touched anything in the kitchen, or if maybe something had been off with the tea. I played dumb. "You think someone tried to poison you?" I asked softly, eyes wide. Why would anyone do that? He didn't have an answer. He just stared at me. That's when I knew he was starting to panic. Good. The next week, I made an appointment with a lawyer. Not one from town, not anyone Nolan could know. A small office an hour away, quiet and professional. I brought every piece of paper I'd collected, copies of our mortgage, bank accounts, insurance, even the prenup we signed years ago. I told the lawyer I wanted to protect myself. We rewrote the deed to the house. With his recent illness and mental state, and with a little manipulation, I got Nolan to sign over more control than he realized. I told him it was just a refinancing adjustment to make things easier. We recovered. He didn't ask questions. He was too distracted trying to reach Taryn, who still wasn't answering his calls. Then I went to the doctor. Not for treatment, but for a statement. I told them about my symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, and asked for an evaluation. After some routine tests, I got a preliminary diagnosis. Signs consistent with autoimmune issues. I took that paper straight to my lawyer. Suddenly, I was no longer just a devoted wife. I was a sick one who needed protection, sympathy, time to heal. Nolan started getting calls from family asking how I was doing. He looked confused every time someone asked, like he didn't know how to answer. Guilt started creeping into his face. That was the plan. I opened a safety deposit box at a small credit union under a different name. Inside it, I placed copies of my toxicology report, the medical diagnosis, legal papers, and photos of Nolan with Taryn. Everything, proof of the poisoning, the cheating, the financial changes, was in one place. Safe, quiet. At home, Nolan grew more paranoid. He double-checked the locks, stopped drinking tea altogether, and started sleeping with the light on. He was losing sleep, losing focus. He looked at me like I was a ghost floating through our home. I stayed calm, kind, soft-spoken. I brought him soup, rubbed his back, kissed his forehead, all while watching his world shrink around him. He didn't know the house was no longer his. He didn't know our money had moved. He didn't know every step he took was being carefully boxed in. He had tried to poison me into silence. But I was speaking now, just not with words. And soon, he'd understand exactly how loud silence could be. I knew her father's name before I knew her. Taryn Melrose, daughter of retired police chief Harold Melrose, a well-respected man who still played golf with city councilmen and spoke at local events about honor and discipline. Taryn, on the other hand, had spent the past year sneaking around hotels and cabins with my husband, while still smiling in photos next to her father at community fundraisers. It was time he saw who she really was. I spent 2 days putting together the package. No return address, no fingerprints, just a plain manila envelope, mailed from a different zip code. Inside, I included everything, printed screenshots of texts between her and Nolan. Be patient. She's almost gone. Photos of them holding hands in public, laughing in restaurants, slipping into hotel rooms. One video clip from a parking lot security camera, time-stamped just weeks before Nolan landed in the ER, showed them kissing next to his car. I added a brief note. You raised a daughter who knows how to lie well. Thought you should see the truth. I mailed it on a Monday. By Thursday, the explosion had happened. Taryn was gone from social media. Her gym profile vanished. People online started whispering. I heard from one of her old clients, a woman who used to train with her, that Taryn had left town in a rush. Apparently, her father showed up at her apartment and threw her suitcase into the hallway, yelling, shouting. A neighbor called it a full-on meltdown. She moved out of state the next day. Nolan tried to find her. I watched him pacing the living room with his phone, calling over and over. Taryn, just call me back, please. I didn't send anything. We can fix this. But there was no reply. She had blocked him on everything. He sat on the edge of our bed, head in his hands, whispering curses under his breath. I stood in the doorway, holding a laundry basket, watching his world collapse. He looked up at me once. Do you think I'm a terrible person? He asked. I tilted my head. What makes you ask that? He didn't answer. Taryn was gone, disowned, out of reach. And Nolan? He was now completely, hopelessly alone. I made sure of that. He had tried to erase me, to slip away quietly and start over with someone new. But I erased her instead. Not with poison or lies, just with the truth. And now, Nolan was left sitting in the ruins of the life he built on secrets, with no one to blame but himself, and no one left to save him. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the silence in the house felt louder than any storm. Nolan had barely spoken all day. He paced, sighed, picked at his dinner. I could feel something coming, something heavy. And then, without warning, he broke. He sat down at the kitchen table, his face in his hand. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he said, voice low, shaky. I wanted something different, a better life. I didn't know how to leave without ruining everything. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him fall apart. He looked up at me. I didn't hate you. I felt stuck, and she made me feel alive again. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Delilah. I just wanted freedom. Freedom. That word sat in the air like a bad smell. I walked over slowly and placed a small box on the table. He looked at it, confused. I opened it and began laying the contents in front of him, one by one. First, the vials labeled dated, carefully preserved samples of the tea he used to serve me. Then, the toxicology reports. My blood work. The chemical breakdowns. Next, the photos, him and Taryn together. The hotel footage. The handwritten copy of their texts. His hands started to tremble. What is this? He asked, barely above a whisper. I met his eyes, calm and steady. Evidence, I said. Of everything. Of what you did. Of what you tried to do. He looked like he might be sick. Delilah. I raised my hand gently, silencing him. You've been drinking my tea for weeks now, I said, voice quiet but cold. You and her both. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just the sound of his breathing, sharp and panicked. I leaned down, looked him dead in the eye. I didn't need to hurt you, I whispered. You did it to yourself. He sat frozen, pale, his face sinking into horror as everything clicked into place. The nausea, the hospital, Taryn's disappearance, the isolation, all of it. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving everything on the table. No more pretending, no more smiling, no more playing the weak wife. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't give him any closure. I just left, because the truth had finally been served, and he drank every last drop. The next morning, I filed the divorce papers. No arguments. No second chances. Just a quiet visit to my lawyer with a calm, signed decision. I didn't even tell Nolan until the papers were already on their way to his office. When he called me, panicked, angry, begging, I didn't pick up. He left 6 voicemails. I listened to none of them. The house was mine now. So was my pension. Our joint accounts? Transferred. Legally, neatly by the book. Thanks to the groundwork I had laid for weeks. Everything was already in motion before Nolan even realized he was being left behind. But I wasn't done. I had spent years helping Nolan build his real estate business. Late nights reviewing contracts. Networking with city officials. Quietly catching the mistakes he made and fixing them before anyone noticed. So when I saw the financial records he kept hidden on his hard drive, I knew what I was looking at and what it could mean. Unreported income. Double-billed clients. Shady property tax write-offs. At first, I thought about deleting them. Erasing them like he tried to erase me. But then I remembered who he really was. So I sent them, quietly, anonymously, to the city council, along with a letter detailing the kinds of things they might want to audit. I used a public library computer and made sure nothing could be traced back to me. Within a week, the audit began. At first, Nolan thought it was random. Then the questions got specific. The tone of the emails changed. His name was pulled from a community grant project. Then 2 of his longtime clients pulled out of contracts. Rumors started to spread. Nobody said anything to his face, but his phone stopped ringing. The invitations dried up. Even his so-called friends stopped returning calls. One by one, the pillars of the life he built began to crumble. And I stayed calm, serene. Not a single outburst. Not a single gloating word. I went to work like normal, tended the garden, smiled at the neighbors. From the outside, I was the picture of peace. But inside, I was watching it all burn. Every lie, every betrayal, every smug look he gave me when he thought I was too weak to fight back. It was all turning to ash. Nolan tried to reach me again. This time, he sent flowers. A note. Please talk to me. I threw the note in the trash. The flowers too. He had burned the bridge between us a long time ago. I just lit the match that brought down everything else. And when the smoke cleared, only one of us was still standing. He showed up at the house one rainy afternoon. I saw his car from the window before he even made it up the walkway. He looked thinner, soaked through, shoulders slumped like the weight of everything was finally too much. He stood at the door with a sad little smile, as if everything that had happened could be fixed with an apology. I didn't open it. Instead, he was met with a folded paper taped to the front glass, a copy of the legal notice. The restraining order was official. He had no right to be here, no right to speak to me, not even from the street. He read it slowly, his face falling as the truth hit him again. Then he backed away, hands in his pockets, and left without a word. That was the last time I saw him. In the weeks that followed, Nolan's world shrank to almost nothing. He lost the condo downtown, couldn't keep up with the rent. Rumor had it he'd tried to charm his way out of the lease, but the landlord had already heard the whispers. About the audit, the failed deals, the woman who disappeared after nearly dying in a hospital bed. He was dropped from 2 business boards, both of which had once bragged about having him. His name quietly disappeared from websites and brochures. The contacts he once used to throw around for power and influence now refused to return his calls. He started working part-time at a hardware supply store on the edge of town. Someone who knew his sister mentioned seeing him there, restocking shelves, folding boxes, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone who recognized him. And then one day, a letter came to my mailbox. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Still neat, still careful. Like he thought effort could erase everything he'd done. I held the envelope for a moment, not with curiosity, with pity. Then I walked over to the trash can, dropped it in, and closed the lid. No response. No closure. Just silence. I was rebuilding now. Not just my home, but myself. Slowly, carefully, room by room, piece by piece. I painted the kitchen a soft sage green, planted fresh flowers along the walkway, bought a new couch, threw away every teacup. My body was healing too. The headaches were gone. The tremors stopped. I could breathe again, sleep again, without fear, without lies. People asked about Nolan sometimes, gently, like his name might still hurt. I just smiled and said, "We don't talk anymore," because in my world now, his name no longer mattered, and it would never be spoken again. The sun was warm on my shoulders, the kind of gentle warmth that makes you close your eyes for just a moment and breathe a little deeper. I sat in the backyard, in the garden I'd planted from scratch over the past year. Lavender, rosemary, wild daisies, everything growing from clean soil. Everything alive. It was the anniversary. 1 year since I first felt sick after that cup of tea. 1 year since my life began to unravel, and I started pulling the thread myself. In my hands was a porcelain mug, pale blue, with a delicate crack near the handle. The only one I kept. Every other cup from that time had been thrown away, smashed into the trash like the lies they carried. But this one was mine. Clean, safe, full of fresh chamomile and lemon balm I'd grown myself. I sipped slowly, feeling the warmth travel through my chest. No bitterness. No fear. Just peace. No more pretending. No more games. No more Nolan. The garden was quiet except for bird song and the soft rustling of wind through the trees. My world had gotten smaller and better. I didn't need noise anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval, forgiveness, or explanation. What I needed was this moment, this stillness. People ask me sometimes how I did it, how I stayed so calm, so quiet, how I didn't lash out or scream or break down. But the truth is, I didn't need to shout to be heard. I didn't need to burn down his house or ruin his name with my voice. I let his own choices ruin him. I just gave them the space to unfold, because revenge wasn't something I went out looking for. I didn't chase it. I brewed it, slow, steady, one careful step at a time, just like the tea he made for me. Only this time, he was the one drinking, and he drank every last drop. I looked around the garden again, at everything I'd rebuilt. My life was mine now, not shared with a man who saw me as disposable, not poisoned by someone who wanted freedom more than honesty. Just me, strong, alive, free. The breeze picked up, and a petal from a daisy floated into my lap. I smiled, brushing it away, then took another sip from my mug. Tea for one. And for the first time in a very long time, that felt exactly right. What about Delilah's decision? Was it justice served or a step too far? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your take. And if you love stories packed with twists and real emotion, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next.